I'm Keston Fulcher, and from the Center for Assessment and Research Studies, and we'll be talking about foundations of learning improvement. And I'm joined by my colleague in faculty development.
Hi, I'm Cara Meixner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Faculty Innovation at JMU. And the way that we're going to do this today is Keston's going to lay the groundwork and talk a little bit about learning improvement, and I am then going to talk a little bit about how faculty development centers partner with assessment centers to move the needle, so to speak.
Great. Thanks so much for that introduction, Cara. So my first slide is about an academic degree program, Computer Information Systems, and this is the learning improvement that they have showed, or better yet, their students have shown. And so the red bars are seniors in 2016, and the blue bars are seniors in 2015. And there are many sub-skills for this requirement elicitation interviews. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but Cara's going to speak to more of those a little later. But the point being is that this is actual improvement from one year over the next. And the question is how did we achieve this type of improvement? The other point I want to make is how rare this improvement is. Rare at our own institution at James Madison University, rare in the state of Virginia, rare in the country, United States, and rare all across the world. You just don't see many of those examples. So let's start with that problem. And I'm going to start with the assessment cycle as we know it. Your universities or your groups probably have some kind of cycle like this. That is, at the top, you start off with student learning outcomes or student learning objectives. There's some curriculum mapping, some methodology, some analysis and reporting out of results, sharing of those results, and using results for improvement. We call this the assessment loop. But in reality, what this assessment loop is something like this, is that we have these different steps, and then that use of results is virtually non-existent across the country. And so we did something called meta-assessment at JMU, where we actually evaluated our assessment reports. And we did find this indeed, that these areas were pretty strong at JMU, but the use of results was weak. Again, that's happening across the country. And this reminded me of a saying that I heard a provost say from William & Mary. And he said, "A pig never fattened because it was weighed." And he made that comparison to assessment and student learning. That is, students never learned just because they were assessed. And so some of my colleagues and I got to thinking about this particular issue. And so we sort of spun that little analogy around, and we said, weigh pig, feed pig, weigh pig. That, of course, a pig is not going to fatten unless you feed it something more nutritious or you feed it more. And so there's a little sign for you. I'm a comic book fan, so I'm always going to put a comic book or two in my presentations. So exploring this a little bit further, let me talk to you about how we think about learning improvement. And so the best way that I can talk about it is through an example. So imagine a situation where you have a program, and let's say it's history, and the student learning outcome at the program level is writing. So they want students to be better writers when they graduate. So the students are assessed on a 4-point scale in a rubric. 1 is beginning, 2 developing, 3 good, and 4 excellent. And students in 2015 are scoring a 2.5, so that's midway between developing and good. And those faculty aren't satisfied with those results. So what they do is they make changes to the curriculum and to the pedagogy. This is what we want to see. However, at this point, I'll argue this is just a change. People often confuse changes with improvements. Just because you do something differently doesn't mean that student learning outcomes are actually going to get better because of it. So now you might imagine a few years later, we assess another cohort, the cohort in 2018. Now, those students' writing scores are 3.5 between good and excellent. Now, we're going to assume perfect methodology here. Sorry, Trudy. Perfect methodology in this case. But now we can say that this change is an improvement. And so one of the obstacles to improvement is really an issue with definition, is that people will use the term improvement when it's actually just a change that has occurred. Now, something that's a problem with the simple model, if you will, which is assess, intervene, reassess, is that it really oversimplifies a very complex process of improvement. And at the very end of the slide deck, we actually have a definition of learning improvement that goes into a bit more detail. But for the time being, I'm going to show this to you. It's a representation of learning improvement, and it has two very important parts to it. There's a faculty part and a student part. And so these circles here represent effectiveness for faculty. So a small blue circle is not effective. A bigger circle is very effective. And by the way, this is just efficacy related to a particular student learning outcome. So these faculty may be great otherwise, but for this particular student learning outcome, he or she may be effective or not effective. On the other hand, we have student, we've got low proficiency, medium, and high. So I'm going to walk through a pretty simple model again. So here's a faculty member teaching a particular section of a class. And you notice the circle's big here? So this faculty member is very effective. And she has 12 students who are going to go into this class, but they're starting off and they're all low proficiency. So let's imagine they go through this class. Now something magical is happening in there, right? Because this faculty member really knows what she's doing. What comes out? Students are of medium proficiency. Now remember, we're talking about a program level student learning outcome. And we know that program level student learning outcomes is almost impossible to go from low proficiency to high proficiency on the students in one course. So for the sake of argument, we'll say it's 2 courses can get students to high proficiency. So now these students go into faculty member 4's section of class 102. And they go in there. Again, something magical happens. They come out and they're high proficiency. Oversimplified, right? Because in most programs, it's not just one section of every class. Oftentimes, there's multiple. So I'm going to go to a more complicated model, yet still ideal. Faculty member 1, 2, and 3 in sections A, B, and C. Again, all these circles are big. They're very effective at teaching this particular student learning outcome. So they're going to go through this class. All these students are having a great experience. They come out, medium proficiency. They go to class 102, faculty member 4, 5, and 6. We run through it. High, high, high. Boy, this is great. Now, does this mirror reality? Most people are shaking their heads. So you might guess what's coming up. I'm going to show another example that might be a little bit more realistic. Now we've got 3 faculty members, but 1 and 2, you see how the circle's small? So related to that particular student learning outcome, they don't have much preparation. They don't have much expertise in teaching that area. But faculty member 3, they are expert. So just in your own head, predict what's going to happen here, here, and here. So here's what we see. Something's happening there, but they're different. And is this what you predicted?
Not that bad.
Not that bad. But these guys are saying they've got really no, they're not effective at all in teaching this learning outcome. And then here, these guys are better. Now, they're going to go to that second class again, right? Class 102. And here we've got faculty member 4, who is moderately effective, right? It's not a super small circle. It's not really big either. And then you have 5 and 6, who aren't effective at all. So again, think about this, these learning outcomes, and think what's going to happen here, here, and here. Something different is happening. Okay. So these guys come out mixed, low and medium. These students had 2 faculty members in a row who were of low efficacy, right? And so they remain low. And in section 6, they come out with moderate proficiency, but this is all due to the faculty member number 3. Again, this is still a simplified model, but this more represents what happens in reality. So here's the issue. Here's a pretty common scenario. If we could look under the hood and actually see what was going on, it might look like this. And here's this idealistic version of what a program might look like. If faculty really understood the curriculum, they were there together, they went through a lot of faculty development. And these are the outcomes of these programs, right? So here's a typical program, here's this ideal program. And we want to know, how can we achieve this type of improvement? There's a few sub-questions to that. So one of those sub-questions is, how can we make the program curriculum coherent? The second is, how can all faculty deliver the curriculum effectively? And the third is, how can assessment capture this improvement? And so one of the obstacles that CFI, Cara's group, and CARS realized is that we have something called a level problem at JMU and elsewhere as well. And let me explain what this level problem is. So this, if you will, is the program represented. And then at the faculty level, we're typically teaching a section of a particular course. And at the program level, this is what assessment focuses on often. It's sort of disembodied outcomes. Like, here's what we're assessing, but we don't pay enough attention to what's happening before to get those outcomes. On the other hand, if you look at the faculty level, faculty development offices spend a lot of time helping faculty become more effective, but it's sort of distanced from the rest of the program. So what we're trying to do is join our program assessment and faculty development efforts in something we called learning improvement by design. And if this is effective, the purpose is to join all the good work that Cara's unit does and faculty development units do with thinking about assessment at the program level. And if successful, we hope we can get to that more idealized version of what a program could do. And so Cara's going to tell us a little bit more about the educational development process.
Okay,
Thanks, Cara.
excellent, excellent. So what I'd like to start by doing is just to kind of define or introduce you to faculty development. And there's been a movement in the last couple of years to talk about our field as educational development, which is more encompassing of some of the work that we do in systems change and in organizational development. POD is our dominant national organization, and it's also called the POD Network. And POD defines faculty development as a growing and vibrant field that helps colleges and universities function effectively as teaching and learning communities. Many of the actions are aimed at teaching, but we also see ourselves as part of key levers in assuring institutional success and organizational change. We've also grown as a community to doing more to support faculty as scholars. We see that in the SOTL movement and the Scholarship of Engagement movement, and also helping faculty move through different statuses and stages of their careers. There are many different genres. Many of you come from different higher education institutions, so you see a lot of these. Much of what we do is reflected in things like individual consultations or coaching sessions. These are often things that help faculty with just-in-time needs. Many of you are familiar with models like the workshop, roundtable, and scholarly talk model. These often help faculty apply innovative, evidence-based methodologies to their courses, to their scholarship. They allow faculty to begin to develop a sense of community. But we're seeing more of a shift away from some of these sort of one-and-done models to things that are deeper, that involve kind of an intense seminar-like focus. So you'll see things like faculty learning communities, small groups of faculty who are working together for a semester or multiple semesters or years to really interrogate, tease apart an issue, and apply it to student learning. We also see things like institutes and residencies. At JMU, for instance, we offer an academic portfolio institute, which is really seminal in helping faculty pull together their integrative narrative as they prepare for things like rank changes, promotion and tenure. We also offer something like a course design institute, which we're beginning to scaffold into curriculum design institute. So I'll talk about some of these different genres because we have used these genres to help educate faculty around the assessment movement and to partner with our organization in CARS. One of the things I'll also note is that in order for LID to work, there have to be 3 partners at the table. So it's not just the connection between faculty or educational development and the assessment world, but it's also bringing in academic program faculty with a great deal of support at the senior level. We also focus on one program level learning outcome. And during our breaks and during our talks, we can talk a little bit more about why that is our focus. In our work together over the past 4 years, we've pulled from different curriculum design elements and also situated our own experience in what we're calling a waterfall or cascade model. These are some of the different processes that we work through in our partnership with CARS and with academic units. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but we move from reviewing the program curriculum into evaluating readiness, focusing on core student learning outcomes, unpacking and mapping that student learning outcome, devising the assessment plan, capturing baseline, redesigning the course, and reassessing. Now, one of the things I want to note about the waterfall model is, picture, if you will, a waterfall in your mind. You see a lot of mist around a waterfall. That's because as the water is falling, all of these feedback loops are created. The water falls, bounces on a rock, comes back up again to the next level. And so what we want to say is that this is not a linear model. We don't go through this in a linear fashion. There are a lot of built-in feedback loops. Sometimes facets of this model are happening at the same time. Today I'm just going to focus on 4 of these just to give you a couple of examples. And we're going to start by going back to the heuristic, the graphic that Keston showed you in the beginning. So we're looking at the Computer Information System Department at JMU. We're in our 3rd year of working with this program. And they have been focusing on one learning outcome, which is to enhance students' requirement elicitation skills. Long story short, they were graduating students who were really good in the technical world. They could build systems. But what they failed to do was they failed in their ability to interview a client and elicit those requirements in order to then build a strong system. So there was a problem there. They had captured baseline data, but more importantly, what created the sense of urgency for the department is that the industry was dissatisfied. Accreditors were watching. There were comments by board members. So they knew that there was a change that needed to happen. But before we consented to partnering with this organization, one of the things we really needed to get a sense of was evaluating readiness. Because like I said before, this isn't just about 2 centers, faculty developers and assessment folks partnering together. We're bringing an academic unit to the table. So we did a lot of work to really make sure that there was support within the unit. We know that lots of academic programs are fraught with politics and tensions. And what we found in also working with other programs outside of CIS is that this is the single most important facet to assuring success. Diamond, in a book on curriculum design, actually talks a little bit about some of the different facets of readiness. So thinking about everything from provost level support all the way down to really interrogating the politics of the department. So if the academic unit head, the department head, is getting ready to leave and they're launching a search, might not be the best time to start a project like this. If there's a whole cadre of faculty nearing retirement with a bunch of new folks coming on, we might want to wait another year to begin. So when we're partnering with programs, we really want to make sure that we have some of this background information. So I'm skipping a couple of steps to talk to you a little bit about mapping the student learning outcome to the curriculum, which is a really important part for faculty developers and assessment experts to partner on. Now at this point, Keston's team had spent almost a full semester with this particular department in really understanding what the elements of requirements elicitation are. And part of what we did was we went out and interviewed industry leaders, we looked at information from alums, we talked to students, we really wanted to make sure we understood what requirements elicitation looked like. And then what Keston's team did was they worked with the program to build a masterful rubric, which now functions as the performance assessment. just to sort of show you, you can see kind of the messiness of this work. So here what we have on this whiteboard, a screenshot, is we see different manifestations or different facets of requirement solicitation, like active listening, teamwork, relationship building, mapped out and described. Here the faculty are starting to figure out, well, what level did these happen at? And then where in Bloom's taxonomy might they occur? Where faculty development enters, and this is what we do really well, is then helping faculty to think about these different facets of this program level outcome and making sure they map into the curriculum at the right level. So there were also some level problems. There were lower level courses where students were being taught at a really high Bloom level. And then a couple of classes later, they were getting the information over again in pure lecture format. So the students were bored. There were all kinds of things happening in the curriculum. So the faculty put together this curriculum map. You can see that what they did was they used Bloom's taxonomy on the upper right hand. We also work with Fink's taxonomy and some others, depending on what the academic unit is interested in. And then we began to see where in the curriculum these competencies would be located. Now, one of the other things that I'll mention is this happened within the context of a course design institute, but the faculty have been working together for a semester. As someone who had the opportunity to observe the work of these faculty, it was just spectacular. They were really empowered and connected. They were able to resolve a lot of age-old tensions. Lots of them sort of thought like, well, that person does that. Oh, you don't? Megan, you're not teaching it at that level? And the faculty became very reflexive too. They realized what they were and weren't doing. And they've continued to work together in really prosperous and abundant ways on the curriculum. So this is kind of how we got to that 3 standard deviation change that Keston shared with you earlier. And what's really exciting is we haven't gone through the full treatment. So that was just the change in 1 year. And we haven't had students go through all of the courses in the program to see what the meta change might look like. So a couple little things. Keston said, Cara, what are some of the things that you would want assessment experts to know about the educational development community? And I think one of the things I'd like to mention is that we are very committed also to faculty learning and faculty development. So part of this process has also been interesting for us to see how faculty network together and how they develop psychosocially. It's not just about their own cognitive development, but also how they begin to knit and weave together a community. And that's where we can do a lot of wonderful work together. When I think about the metaphor of feed pig, weigh pig, feed pig, and I think about the intervention that takes place, it's not just an intervention for student learning, it's also this intervention around faculty learning and faculty development. And we believe that happier, more connected faculty have a greater sense of belonging, and we've actually assessed that at JMU, and feel better about their classes, and there's then an impact on students. We wanted to make sure that we offer some acknowledgements. There are so many people in this room that are part of LID, that make LID happen, and we wanted to say thank you to them. You can see their names up here. And I'm not sure if you wanted to entertain questions now or if that happens at the end, at the very end.
At the very end.
At the very end,
Yeah.
okay. And so on our very last slide, we're just going to kind of put up a working definition of learning improvement that you can look through and think a little bit about. It's something that is in kind of beta testing stage, and we're hoping to continue to work on. So thank you for your time today.